I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name, the season of dreams.
So JUCK over with Menace to Sports.
And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champs, will be remembered for how they came out of that. And welcome to JUCK on Bucks on a Friday. Appreciate you so much for joining me as we continue to celebrate this national championship that our Buckeyes won. The guy who orchestrated the whole thing, the guy who went through spring and went through preseason and the long regular season, only to lose at the end of that regular season, leading to, most likely, we would imagine, a very low time in his life and his family's life and a really rough time. Then to bring everybody together, take them on a playoff run for the ages, culminating in a national championship win. And that poor guy, as we sit and decompress and bask in the glow, he can't do that. He can't go off to Aruba for a week with his wife. He's right back at it because we're in a 5-day window right now where any Buckeye can go and enter into the transfer portal, take off and go somewhere else. So he's working hard on retaining those players, retaining coaches. People are coming after everybody. And it makes me kind of sad for him. It makes me kind of sad that after this huge emotional time in accomplishing the biggest thing he can accomplish in the sport, you're already behind the 8 ball for next year because you've gone on so long. Everybody else is already way ahead of you. You lose Calvin Simpson-Hunt already. Some of these Buckeyes obviously have been contacted already by other programs, and that's been going on for a period of time. It's just how it goes now. We know that. And I did my projected starting roster the other day. I'm probably going to need to update that at a few positions by the time we get to the regular season. You know, we're probably going to lose some guys here. But what Ohio State's been great at since this era of the transfer portal is retaining impactful guys. And the vast majority of players who have entered into the transfer portal from Ohio State are guys who either never saw a path to the playing field or didn't see it until they were seniors, guys who had been passed up by dudes who came in after them. And they've just been great at it. And I think it speaks to the culture. Yes, you need money, but culture is what's keeping these guys around. Because when you enter a period like this, you look at a team like this, right? So the 2024 Buckeyes, all these seniors leave. You got all these next guys up that we just went over the other day. They've got all the leverage in this situation, and there's no doubt these guys all are represented by agents now. Their agents are telling them the deal here. You know, they're being advised by guys whose job it is to get them the most money in the best situations. And these guys are telling them, look, Ohio State's giving you this. I can get you this over here, and you can start over there as well. They've got great coaches over there. They sent this many guys to the NFL last year. You know what I mean? So now the player's got to make a decision. He's going to go in, talk to the staff. Listen, these guys are offering me this. Can we do something about what we're doing here? And Ohio State's going to decide at that point, how much can we give him? How much is he, do we need him? And they're going to come back with a number. Now, some guys will take less because, number one, people don't really like change. They don't want to move. I mean, less than what the other people are offering. And some guys will stay for, a small raise. They're meeting them in the middle. And some guys will, no, you got to match me or I'm going to go. And I think that is where the culture part plays a huge role. Because if you've got a place that people love to be at, a place where people feel welcome and loved and like a family and like a real brotherhood, they are much less likely to leave for that extra, however many dollars it is. There's going to be some that are going to get a deal that it just doesn't make sense to stay for them. We're probably going to see that. And it's going to suck. That's the era we live in. What sucks double time is that when we look at the guys who entered the portal, Ohio State got some guys out of the portal, but most of the good ones are gone now. And now they're going to be the last ones to lose their guys and not have the ability to replace them. until the spring portal, which doesn't generally feature as many talented guys. So, you know, they're behind the eight ball, that's for sure, but they always do a good job. So we can take solace in that. And the good news is we're going to know in a couple days as we wrap this thing up. Now, you already lost Calvin Simpson-Hunt, and Calvin Simpson-Hunt has committed to Baylor, so he goes back to Texas. But, you know, we'll probably have to redo that starting lineup projection we did the other day several times from now to the season. There's probably going to be a couple guys that aren't around anymore, and it's just going to happen. You know what blows my mind? So I've been doing this YouTube now for just about a year, and the other day I did a 40-minute episode, and I put this show out, and then it's like 5 p.m. and I'm thinking, you know, I did that little starting lineup thing in there. Maybe somebody might like to just watch that. So I'm like, I'll clip that little 9-minute segment. It's 9 minutes, and I put that out. Wouldn't you know that little 9-minute segment does 7 times the views that the whole show did. And every time I think I've got this thing figured out, something like that just blows my mind. So I don't know, but we did hit our goal, guys. We hit our goal of 10,000 before we got to a year. I'm so stoked. I really appreciate you guys. It feels like a fantastic accomplishment for year one on JUCK on Bucks. And I have had such a great time. I really appreciate you guys, especially those of you who are YouTube members, which anybody feel free to join that with a link in the description. Some exclusive content, some things I don't say to the general public, the really juicy stuff that is in the YouTube membership. But please like today's video. Maybe I'll release 2. Maybe it'll blow up again, a little 10-minute segment of this one. Now, we have not spoken to our man, Dylan Davis. Dylan went to the national championship game. He went to the Tennessee game. Then he went to the Rose Bowl. He missed the Cotton Bowl because he was down sick bad, but he was able to go to the national championship game, his first national championship game since he's been covering the team. And we have not had him on yet. So today, Dylan's going to join me. And Dylan and I had a question for him ahead of time, and I thought mine out too. But I wanted to discuss with Dylan these 3 national championships that Ohio State has won in our lifetimes, just based on your personal experience. How do you rank them and how much they meant to you for whatever reason? And we're each going to do that. So Dylan joins us now. Dylan Davis from the Delaware Gazette. All right. As you all know, we have not talked to our guy, Dylan, since he's been back from the national championship. Dylan Davis from the Delaware Gazette. Dylan, you went down, you covered the game, you missed the Cotton Bowl because you were sick, but you got to the national championship game. Tell us about your trip.
You know, it was perfect. I mean, down to the game, obviously, it was perfect. It was the most perfect ending to just a journey of a season. It was cold down there, but other than that, it was just a fun time. I enjoy Atlanta. It's my favorite media hotel that I've ever stayed in. It's just a good operation. No, it was just a blast. And obviously the game itself, I don't have to tell anybody, you know, I've been to a lot of big football games before, but to see it on that side, to cover one was a new experience for me, and cover a national title game. And so that was a special opportunity, and certainly, you know, for Ohio State to win the game and to be able to experience that from that angle, it was just awesome. It probably hasn't really sank in yet. You know, I've been trying to get back into the regular flow of the week. So, you know, and it's a whirlwind covering these games. So it probably hasn't sank in yet. I haven't had a chance to rewatch the game yet either. So I imagine as I'm sitting there watching that for the first time, it probably will. But an awesome time.
So we spoke before the game, and we both kind of were thinking that Ohio State, if they play their game, they're going to win by a couple touchdowns. What were your thoughts as I was live for the game? I was live streaming. That first drive, couldn't seem to get him off the field, kept converting on 4th down, goes 18 plays. But Leonard clearly beat up, and I didn't even hear this until today, that he threw up on the sideline after that touchdown. I don't know how I missed that. But what were your thoughts? Because everybody was going nuts. My thought was, this isn't sustainable. This is exactly what they need to do, but they can't do it like that with this guy. He's gonna die.
My first thoughts, similar to what you just said. My first thoughts were like, you couldn't have scripted up a more perfect start to the game from Notre Dame. I mean, it is literally everything they could have ever imagined doing to start that game, to go down and get a touchdown and have the ball for 10 minutes, keep Ohio State's offense on the sideline for the first 10 minutes of that quarter. It was just perfect in every way. And so I wasn't worried in the sense that you're right. It was never going to be sustainable. Riley Leonard running the ball 9 times, in a drive, just wasn't going to be something that Notre Dame was going to be able to do consistently. But I will say I wasn't concerned, but I also wanted to see how Ohio State's offense responded to it as well, because having been off the field for 10 minutes, if they go out and they go 3 and out, or even if they have to just punt the football away in general, and then next thing you know, you're not getting the ball back until, it's sometime in the, probably in the second quarter. And that's, again, just further along the recipe for what Notre Dame wanted to do. Then it would have gotten a little more antsy, and you kind of see the recipe for an upset brewing. So, I wasn't really worried in the sense that it wasn't sustainable, but I was worried to see how Ohio State would respond, because we still had yet to see the Ohio State offense against the Notre Dame defense matchup. And so, but once Ohio State leveled the score there, I felt pretty confident that if Notre Dame wants to match blow for blow, this isn't going to go well. And we saw how that went. So
we did. And we watched, it almost feels somewhat routine, because Will Howard has been so accurate, especially the last half of this year, that we're just watching him pile up these completions, taking what's given. And he's talked a lot over the year about Chip kind of ingraining that in him. Just take what's there, take the easy yards, take the first down. He has become so efficient at this. Like the amount that we watch this guy improve from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, it's just tremendous. I think it's such a testament to what Chip and Day were able to do with this guy. I think it really sets them up well for future quarterback recruiting, particularly out of the portal. When you see a guy like this who came in and his knock was his accuracy, and he comes to Ohio State, starts setting records, and puts on a show like that in the national championship game.
By the end of the season, it looked like he was almost throwing 7-on-7, and these weren't easy throws. They weren't 7-on-7 throws, but a lot of times it looked like he was just throwing 7-on-7, just easy throws, completely in rhythm, comfortable. And it was truly a sight to behold for a guy who we knew he was a good quarterback, and we knew that he fit the offense well, and we thought the legs would be a lot more of a factor in that than they were throughout the regular season. But then also, come playoff time when they had to, it was a factor, and it makes you wonder if they thought, and rightfully so, they could just get away without doing that and make sure they got him to the finish line. But as just a pure passer, as a quarterback who's going to sit back there and deliver the football by the end of the season, everybody's talking about it now, and I'm glad to see that, because obviously a month ago nobody was talking about Will Howard, the NFL prospect. And I was watching Pat McAfee today, and I forget who the guy was on there that they had, but he's talking about him as a potential top 50, top 60 pick.
Whoa.
Draft. That's before he's really sat down and analyzed the playoffs, which is going to be his best film. So I'm glad to see that, but it makes sense though, because by the end of the season, he looked like a complete quarterback. Not to say that he's going to go, be a 10, 11-year starter in the NFL, or that he's even, he's going to be a, second round draft pick, but he looks every bit like a guy who has staying power in the NFL, which I don't think anybody really thought that at the beginning of the year. Even if you tried to script up the best year that Will Howard could have, I don't think anybody thought like, hey, this is going to put him on, draft radars for, potential round 2 pick or anything like that. But that's where he's at right now. And it's obviously a direct result of how well he was playing by the end of the year. And it was fantastic.
Yeah. We talked about his running ability, his moxie, his leadership, his experience, and the bump he's going to get playing with a lot better cast of players. All he's got to do is be a facilitator. And he ended up being a dude by the end of the year. He's a straight up dude. Really cool story, really cool to see, and interesting again with another national championship quarterback that just kind of comes out of nowhere for the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
But Ryan Day wins his middle 8 like he always wants to, gets that final touchdown heading into halftime, another touchdown coming out of the half, and then the Buckeyes get it to 31-7 off of a really nice field goal. No pressure field goal. Our guy nails it. And it's 31-7, whole lot of game left. I was starting to get a little irritated when Notre Dame was climbing back and the offense seemed to totally shut down, focusing more on running out the clock when Will was so hot. Like, let's just pick up a few first downs. Didn't seem like they were just more interested. It almost felt like an early celebration, and I get it. They didn't feel like they were in any danger, but man, was that frustrating to watch them climb back in that thing with penalties and Riley Leonard making some good throws that, again, weren't sustainable. Props to him. But
Sure.
there was a point towards the end there where I was starting to get a little nervous. I got to admit.
Well, let's not forget here the one thing that we talked about before the game, and I think a lot of people would have agreed with, if Notre Dame was going to have any path to victory, Ohio State was going to have to help them. There have to be turnovers. That Emeka Egbuka turnover changed everything. I mean, it changed so much. They were going to go score there, and he thought about, maybe the whispers of, hey, maybe Notre Dame can climb back in this game would have been smashed out. They would have all been stamped out. Ohio State was going to be back to rolling and probably winning big as well if he doesn't have that football knocked out. So just like we said, a turnover sparked a run for Notre Dame that frustrating is one word to say. Yeah, it was something more than that for sure. I don't think I ever got to a point where I considered the fact that Ohio State could blow this. I don't think I got to that point, but certainly could acknowledge that, certainly with a 3rd and 11 as well, I question how aggressive Ohio State would be in that situation. I think a lot of people would. Frankly, the offense we had seen for the last, quarter and a half suggested they weren't going to do anything, to screw that up or put the ball in harm's way, and they'll just put their defense back out there again. And obviously they dial up the shot, but it was frustrating for sure. I never really got to a point where I thought they might blow it. But it was frustrating because, and look, at the end of the day, all that matters is you win the football game. But dang it, I wanted them to blow them out as well. I wanted it to be just one more massive statement, to the college football world that Ohio State's just that much better than everybody. This wagon they've been talking about for a month now, it's a wagon, all right. And look, it still was. So I'm not saying, but I wanted it to be reflected on the scoreboard as well. But
I did too. I was a little irritated by that as well. I didn't like the fact that it looked like they crawled back in it. I mean, props to them. Also ironic. A great play by the Notre Dame kid to punch that ball out of Emeka's hand. But when you look at Trey's penalty against Texas, and then Emeka with the fumble in the national championships, like the last two guys I would have ever thought to make a decision or a mistake in a moment like that. It happens. But that shot, Dylan, was, again, I was calling it live. I said right there, man, that is holy Buckeye-ish. Like, it was like, it just straight back to that moment. I couldn't believe that they took that shot. Granted, you had a good matchup, but you got to really trust your quarterback. That takes huge stones in that moment, in that situation. I was stunned, but what perfect execution. What a ball. Just an amazing moment. And like right then, it was over. It was done. Crazy.
If I were a Notre Dame fan, there were so many things about this game that I would have been very, very disappointed with from the coaching staff. There's a list of things that I don't understand from a coaching perspective. I know Marcus Freeman is a fantastic head coach. He has a bright future. He's certainly one of the younger stars, up-and-coming stars in college football coaching, and had a good staff as well. But there are a few things that I just didn't understand, and certainly the decision to leave Christian Gray out there on an island against Jeremiah, 3rd and 11, was just, and bring that much pressure was just, it's a choice. All right. And, they made it and it burned them. It was a great route by JJ, obviously, and just a beautiful throw. It's one of those, it's kind of weird because it didn't lead to a touchdown or it didn't lead to a go ahead score or anything like that. But it's one of those throws that, should go down in Buckeye lore because, I mean, it put the game away. I don't think I ever got to a point where they were going to lose the game, but I mean, the possibility was still out there until that throw was made, essentially. So it's one of the bigger throws in Ohio State history, which, we talked about this the last time I was on here about those moments, and it's not going to be Jack Sawyer's, scoop and score. And you mentioned Holy Buckeye, but it had a little bit of that Holy Buckeye feel to it because I felt like that ball was in the air for, 20 minutes. And so, it certainly belongs up there for sure. But good for Ryan Day. Ryan Day taking a shot, being aggressive, saying if they're going to screw this up, it's going to be because they were being aggressive. Now I don't really understand. I do and I don't. You talked about being aggressive and not kind of just kind of falling back on their heels and letting the foot off the gas, through that second half. They did that, and then all of a sudden be aggressive. Like, I'm glad that Ryan Day took that shot. I'm glad they said that they would go down swinging. But if they would have went down swinging, for an entire quarter before that, they would have won that game with 21 points. They would have won it going away. So, it's just kind of pick a lane and stay in it, I guess. But but anyways, it was certainly one of those moments. And I guess there is something to say for the fact that, in a national title game, it had that moment that Ohio State came away with it, with one of those iconic moments, one of those moments you'll see on montages, and one of the moments that anytime, we reflect back on that game, we'll talk about that, that throw and catch to JJ. So I guess in that sense, it was cool that it had that moment, because before that, it was kind of devoid of that, because it was just a runaway freight train, and it was just a, belt to ass situation that Notre Dame couldn't keep up with. So
the Ohio State defense, despite giving up more points than we thought maybe they would have. Notre Dame's point total was 17. The Buckeyes gave up 23. You had some sloppy penalties there late in the game and maybe a couple nonsense ones, but this defense, it just felt very, very dominant again in this game. And the way they were able to shut down the run, which was just the flat out key to victory. They stopped Notre Dame from running. They win easy. And they just totally shut down those two running backs. Incredibly impressive. And what we saw out of these guys, they didn't even have to do anything special against them. I mean, it was pretty much just based the whole way. And it was so impressive. This run from the defense, really since Oregon, what we just saw here with these guys, and it shouldn't be a huge surprise based on the third year with Jim Knowles and the talent. But I almost felt like at points I was taking for granted just how generationally good this unit was. It was a pleasure to watch. I don't think we'll see another one this good for a very, very long time, man.
It's going to be hard to with the the world we live in now, with roster retention being a very real issue, and NIL and all these things. It's going to be hard to keep a unit like that quite together again. And the same way, it's going to be hard to get. I mean, obviously the foundation of this defense is made by a bunch of guys who decided to come back and forego their pro opportunities to try to make one more run at accomplishing their goals. So that in itself is going to be hard to do. And obviously this defense isn't what it is without Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau and Cody Simon and Lathan Ransom, Denzel Burke. So that in and of itself going to be tough to do. And then, you think, well, it's Ohio State, there's another wave coming, and there is, but the margin for missing on these guys in the, in that second wave is a lot thinner now because of the guys that are transferring out. So it's going to be tough to find, a unit like that again. And that also speaks to how dominant they were. I mean, Ohio State can have a national championship caliber defense and then still not be as good as that defense, because that defense is one of the best we've ever seen at Ohio State. And obviously we've seen some pretty good ones, but so yeah, it's going to be hard to do just by the numbers alone. And, also the fact that it's just a high bar to reach how good they were, but it was a treat. It was a treat for sure. And, that's one of my biggest takeaways. We'll probably talk about this more, but, just thinking back to this season, the storylines, all these things that went into this playoff run, and then the playoff run itself, like the number of storylines that come out of this, obviously every title season is going to have a bunch of storylines, but the number of storylines in this season, it's hard to even process them all, because you start thinking about this thing and that thing and this guy and that. And then you think, well, I didn't even consider this. Perfect example, Jaden Fielding. Obviously, he's a kicker. Nobody's going to talk about Jaden Fielding. Kickers don't get the love. They get all the blame. Obviously, it was a tough time for Jaden Fielding after that Michigan game, but the way Jaden Fielding stepped up for Ohio State in the playoffs, magnificent. Nobody's going to talk about it. It's not Ryan Day wants to talk about stories, being told now, and maybe it's just a product of being a kicker, but nobody's going to talk about Jaden Fielding. But that kid deserves so much credit for how big he was for Ohio State in this playoff run. And yeah, they didn't really technically need a lot of his kicks, but still he delivered when they needed him to. And obviously the kick at the end of the national title game to officially put it away. We talk about the JJ, throw and catch. It was the field goal that officially sent Ohio State on to be national champions. So,
yep.
But anyways, all of these stories, and there's just so many of them that it's hard to, especially as a writer. I'm trying to I want to write a lot of these things, but I have to pick and choose because I only have so many hours in the day, and there's just no shortage of stories.
I've had the same thing going on all this week, Dylan. It's like my mind's going so many different directions. I'm having a hard time picking a focus point and going after it. But kind of what I went in on immediately after the game is that I feel like what we just saw, from as down as we were for that 2.5 weeks between Michigan to the Tennessee game, to walking in to that game, seeing all those Tennessee folks and the vibe of everybody, the national media towards Brian Day and the team, and wasting the $20 million roster and all the guys that came back being failures, the portion of the fan base who wanted Day fired, but immediately those who were, previously bought in on him and were like, okay, this is it. It's either going to be a run in this playoffs or I'm totally out. That period felt to me like, just obviously we had some really low periods with Coop, but as far in my life, because of social media and how much things are magnified now, that was by far just the weirdest, lowest period we've ever had. And it was a team that was 10-2 hosting a playoff game as a 9-point favorite at home, first playoff game ever. Because that's how you started, and because that's how low you were heading into that playoff run, and then watching what happened in the playoff run, I don't think we will ever see a situation like this replicated again. I don't think it can even happen anywhere else than Ohio State.
It's so unique and impossible to replicate that you won't even be able to compare it to anything anymore. And there will be others, there will be some, for as long as the playoff exists, there will be some other storylines and runs to national titles that'll be really special for their own reasons. Just like Ohio State's 2014 run and into the 15 national title game was really special for its own reasons. But the number of things, a lot of which you just highlighted there, are so unique and so almost impossible to happen again all at once. That we won't ever see anything like this again. And when you think about Ohio State's 3 national championships, I alluded to the 2014 national title, and obviously we all know what it took to go win that and the adversity they overcame. You think about the 2002 season and how wild that was because of just the constant close football games and pulling games out late and defying the odds all the way to a national title against one of the best college football rosters ever assembled. Every one of these national title seasons has really been pretty wild when you think about them and when you break it down and when you reflect on it. So, obviously winning a national championship special anytime, but the 3 that I've gotten to witness, you've gotten to witness in your lifetime, every one of them was especially awesome and enjoyable because of everything that went into them. They weren't boring. They weren't, this team was just better than everybody from start to finish, and obviously that's fun as well. I know Michigan had a lot of fun being 15-0 last year, and they should, rightfully so. That's awesome, but there was nothing boring about any of these national titles, certainly, and that just makes it all the more rewarding.
So when we look back at these 3 national titles, all so very different, but all with an incredible storyline to go with them, I thought a lot this week about how I would rank these as far as how much they meant to me, just how they made me feel. And I got my 3 in order. You want to go first?
Oh, you go.
Okay. So number 1 for me will always be 2002. And it'll always be 2002 for some reasons. Obviously, I was younger, about, I think, 22 years old at the time. And I just think at a younger age, and in the fact that was the first time I'd ever seen it, it just hits a little harder. But coming into, the prior year with hiring Tressel and the 310-day speech and me like, oh my gosh, I think I really like this guy. And then beating Michigan and coming into that season, just feeling like, I think we actually got the dude. And the way it went with all the close games, and then, up to winning the game and him getting the invitation and him saying, we accept, everything about it was just so cool. And going into that game, feeling like there's so much anxiety. Can we hang with these guys? Can we just hang, or are we going to get just blown out? And as the game went on, just feeling like just the giddiness of, oh my gosh, we're really hanging with these guys.
Yep.
And obviously we didn't know then, we wouldn't find out till later that we were just as talented as those guys. But we didn't have any idea at the time. And the way the game played out, obviously, just everything about it was perfect, and it'll always just have the most special place for me, no matter how many times we do this. And number two is definitively 2024. This season was just storybook from start to finish, and maybe some of that has to do with me covering it,
Sure.
and being so much more involved than I've ever been in a season on the day-to-day minutia of everything about it. But for all the reasons we've just discussed, it's just amazing. And it's crazy because 2014, like I remember walking out of that Virginia Tech game, and it was the eeriest feeling I've ever had in my life. So many people just walking and moving like a bunch of zombies in stunned silence,
Yep.
just waves of people. And going from that to the national championship and beating Bama and everything that represented, more than just a win, but what it represented at the time. And an amazing national championship that was too, obviously. But that's my order. How about you?
Well, there are so many things that go into this that are, personal and unique to a person's situation. So obviously, you kind of highlighted some of those things as well. So, and just in general, it's like picking children, trying to pick one of these things. Every one of them is so special. And like myself, like you, like so many Buckeye fans in the state and around the country, around the world, just means the world, just means so much. But with that being said, there are a couple of things that make 2014 my favorite one. And I think the first part of that, like going back to the 2002 season, I was younger. I was in 7th grade. So I was old enough. Very well, I lived and died Buckeye football at that point. I understood, what the national championship meant. But, I think watching a national title from an adult perspective, I think you can truly understand. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it until the day that I die. When people ask me why Ohio State football means so much to people, I always tell them it's because it's family. It's family in the state, or not just the state, but to people who grew up loving Buckeye football. It's not just the football itself. It's not the school. It's not the helmets. It's not the players, the coaches. It's that. It's woven into the fabric of families. You get together on Saturdays. It's what you do, and that's certainly the way I was raised. And so with that being said, being able to be at the Michigan game, at the Big Ten title game, in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, and then in Dallas for the national title game, all with my dad, and being an adult at that point, being able to understand how special these moments were, and understanding that I need to, just milk this for all it's worth, because, one of these days this will be some of my best memories. That's all I have with my dad. So that was kind of the first time that I had that moment, and also understood how precious, the opportunity was that we had. So that'll always be number one to me. And then on top of that, just, beating Bama, in the Sugar Bowl. We talked about the biggest moments in Ohio State history, in that 85-yard run by Zeke, just that as well. But you also said it. I mean, that again, as improbable as that run was after that Virginia Tech game, to think that they felt like 16th, I believe, after that loss. And every week Ohio State would win, and they'd win comfortably. And Buckeye fans would talk about it, and they'd move up 2 spots in the rankings, and then they'd move up another spot after the week, and it was just slowly but surely. And you kind of the season gets later, and you think, like, is there enough time left for them to get where they need to go? And all that led up to the Michigan game, and then JT Barrett getting hurt. And you want to talk about weird, walking out of the stadium that day, Ohio State clinching a spot in the Big Ten title game, and having just beaten Michigan, and it felt like everything was lost. It felt like, just an absolute gut punch walking out of the stadium after beating Michigan and clinching a spot in the Big Ten title game. And it felt like a gut punch. And then the rest is history, obviously, as we know. So that'll always be number one to me as well. I hope it's not recency bias, but, maybe time will tell. But 2024 will be number 2 for me. And these are all, it's basically 1A, 1B, and 1C. 2024 would be, one where it'd be B for me, but I was very close to saying it's my number 1, and try not to be biased, but just like you said, covering it the way you have, this is my first national championship season on this beat. It might be my last national championship season on the beat. Time will tell, but who knows? And so to be able to be there every step of the way, to make my first trip to Pasadena, something that was a bucket list, for me since I was a child, one of the, very few things left I had to do that, on the path to covering a national title game and being there to see him win the national title from that perspective. It's hard to not make that number one. But I think in time, as I look back on it, I will still choose 14 because, again, what it meant, for myself, family wise, which is, the most important thing to me. It's why I love Ohio State football. And then there's 2002, which, again, I was young. I was old enough to understand it. I loved it. But, I think for me at that age, it was as much about, reason to talk shit to people that weren't Ohio State fans at school, like that. It wasn't, I didn't think about the historical, relevance or, what it meant to people's legacies or what it meant to, Ohio State story tradition. I wasn't quite thinking about it from that angle. So, it was, but I will say from the game itself, the national championship game, I think most people would say, that national title game is certainly my favorite of all those moments. But again, it's hard to differentiate between the three. They're all so special in their own way. I said this about the moments thing when we talked about the Jack Story scoop and score. I mean, Buckeye fans just really need to take a step back and think about how blessed and fortunate they are that we're sitting here trying to differentiate between three national titles in our lifetime and say oh, which one was better and why was it better? That's insane to 99% of the country, other fan bases. So how awesome is that to be able to do that? Yeah.
It is amazing. It's a real shame that you go through this grueling championship and you just kind of want to, I imagine, the guy in charge have a bit of a release and a little bit of downtime, but it's right back at it because you're trying to retain the roster and you got a 5-day window. Calvin Simpson Hunt into the portal. We're hearing about a lot of guys potentially having some decisions that they may be making, and they're obviously working fast and furious to retain their roster. I meant to tell you, by the way, I don't know. Taiwan Malone's mom must watch the show and know that you and I are her biggest son's biggest fans.
No kidding.
She tweeted at me and wanted to show me that he was, a national champion in baseball and in football, which I had totally forgotten.
That's so awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah. She must know that Dylan the Juckster, big fans of Ty Malone. Dylan, the OG backer of Taiwan Malone before he had his breakout game this year. He called it. Dylan called it first before anybody. And hopefully we see some big things from him this upcoming season. But when we talk about this, I just did a kind of a starting lineup way too early breakdown the other day. And we look at so many of these guys that honestly, in this era of football, if your culture isn't strong as hell, these dudes got the program by the balls. They can if your culture isn't really, really strong, and you got an agent pushing you, and a lot of these guys probably do. Listen, you've got serious leverage here. It's time for us to talk. And your culture's got to be incredibly strong. We'll see how they come out of this period. But I think better than most. I think they do this almost better than anybody else when it comes to retention because the culture is like it is. The brotherhood's real. These guys don't want to let everybody down. You saw it with the seniors coming back. It's something about Ryan Day that, and I've been critical of him for a lot of different reasons, praised him for a lot. One of the things I've always praised him for, the culture that he's built at this program is second to none in the country. And it was really ironic that they talked about that at Notre Dame, that was what was going to win them the game. And I'm sure, because Marcus is so great, that their culture is fantastic. But nobody beats Ohio State with that.
No, without question. Look, roster retention, as I mentioned earlier, and as everyone knows and is seeing play out, is a very big issue for everybody. Everything Ohio State's dealing with right now isn't, that's not unique to Ohio State. It's a problem for everyone. And you're absolutely right about culture. In a day and age where, cash rules everything. It's your only shot of holding on to some of these guys is to have a strong culture. And even that's still not going to be enough sometimes. That's just reality of it, because as you talked about with leverage, they do have the players have all the leverage in the world. I mean, what leverage can you say that a school does have? I almost feel bad for saying this, but I think it's kind of true. Like, I mean, something's got to happen to help these schools out. And it's weird because I was, for the longest time, I was the biggest, proponent of, paying players and giving them their share, because it was criminal that they hadn't up to this point. But now this is still evolving, something has to be done to kind of help these schools out, because the way this is going right now, and especially for a team like Ohio State and Notre Dame as well. But since we're talking about Ohio State, especially for a team like Ohio State, who's fresh off a national championship, in 3 weeks, we're going to start talking about spring practice. All those mat drills that they always talk about with Coach Mick and the strength staff and the conditioning staff, and all those things that kind of really start to build that foundation for what you hope is a national title run. They'd already be firmly in the middle of that. They would be knee deep in these winter workouts right now. Instead, they just flew back to Columbus on Tuesday, and hope to just kind of decompress for a little bit before getting right back into it. I know Ryan Day talked about it after the game. I can't remember if it was in the post-game press conference or the press conference the next morning, but he talked about something needing to be done with the schedule, because it's, and the fact that Ohio State's not going to be able to approach their spring practice like they normally would, and he doesn't know what that's going to look like yet. And certainly I don't, blame him for not knowing what that's going to look like, but he said they cannot run a spring practice the way they have in the past, given what's just happened and how long they played football for, and the fact that it's January 20th and they're just now ending the season. So those kind of things as well, like something's got to be done to help these programs out. And oh, by the way, while all that's happening, all this tampering is happening, and other programs are just preparing to pluck people off your roster, while you're still trying to go win a national title game. So it's insane. You're right. They have all the leverage in the world. It's what it is. Again, it's not unique to Ohio State. It is this year because they were one of the two teams that actually, was still playing on January 20th. But it's certainly an issue. But again, you're right. At least Ohio State has that culture, because it means something. I don't know how much it means and who it'll mean it to. I mean, it might mean more to some than others. Frankly, if say a guy were to go win a national title, the way that Ohio State won this national title, everything we talked about, and the reason why they were able to do it, when they turned inward and shut everybody else out and just got closer as a team and said, we're going to go on a run and go win this national title like everyone expected us to. If you could turn around and leave that, when you're still, when you have a chance to play at Ohio State, then, again, some culture might mean something more to some than others.
Sure.
But certainly it's a good place to start as well, because if you're going to have any chance of surviving in this day and age, you better have a strong culture. You better have a reason that people want to stay there in the first place, or otherwise it's just going to be an open house on guys coming and going from your program. So
when we talk about how long this thing went, we saw we look at Ohio State, Notre Dame, obviously two of the most successful programs in the history of college football, with two of the biggest fan bases. And this playoff, which was brand new, incredibly exciting. I don't know if my opinion might be skewed a little bit, because I was going through it with my team and how I would feel if I was, if Ohio State had gotten knocked out in round one, watching this thing go on. But the fact that it was 22 million viewers versus 25 last year, when it was Michigan and Washington, and granted, Michigan's storyline or their story arc and the interest in them last year, because of everything that went on with them and their huge fan base, was huge, no doubt about it. But that 25 million, that wasn't the record. But the fact that I was stunned. I thought that it was going to be like an all-timer. Now, the line wasn't particularly tight, and usually that draws more interest, but just the end of this first playoff and the way Ohio State went through it, to see that end, like, just me as a college football fan, like, absolutely, I'm all in on that. I mean, I'm all in on them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I would have thought that would have grabbed the attention of many more casual fans and even people who aren't college football fans. And I'm sitting here trying to think of why this is. And when you bring up the time frame, 51 days from rivalry week, and it just seems like this is gone. It just went on way too long, and maybe people just petered out at the end, because, like you said, like, these other fan bases, they're talking about their team and what they're doing right now, and like, they're already knee deep into next year.
Yep.
And we're still going on. And I can see how maybe their interest kind of waned. And again, I won't be able to feel it myself until we're not in it.
Right.
My hope is I think they need to get rid of the 10 days between games. They've got to shorten that time frame. You can shave, a week right there quickly, a little more than a week right off the rip with that. But other than that, I don't know what else you do unless you're somehow incorporating these conference championship games into the playoff. But as we've seen this year one, saw it play out like that to me seems to be one of the bigger issues aside from the seeding, which we all know is an issue and will be corrected in 26, but not until then. And I imagine we'll be at 14 or 16 and 26 as well. Speaking of that, what is your take on moving to 14 or 16?
Well, as soon as they moved it to 12, I was immediately on board with saying just move it to 16. I understand, how this goes, so it probably won't. But as soon as it went to 12, it made just all the sense in the world to go to 16. And then I said, I hope it never moves, from there. I think 16 teams is perfect. If you're going to already go to 12, I didn't want 12 in the first place. I wanted an 18 playoff, and so and I thought that would have been perfect. I don't care about, but then again, you look at this year's playoff and, eight's kind of really, cutting it off at that line of, now a lot of that had to do with seeding as well. So, but, when you think about, where Notre Dame and Ohio State were ranked in this playoff, it makes you wonder as well. But, I wanted 8, but as soon as I went to 12, I said, move to 16 and please don't do anything after that. We don't need, more than 16 teams competing for a national championship. I would be, well, I would go ahead and say nobody outside of the, 16 teams is going to win a national championship ever. If that would,
No.
So there's the idea of Cinderellas in a college football playoff just doesn't exist, folks. It's not that's a pipe dream, not going to happen. So so I would go to 16. I think it would just make things a little bit easier and balanced if you're going to go to 12 already. But I didn't love 12 in the first place. To your point about the schedule, it was ridiculous how long this college football season went. I know it was ridiculous for me and anybody who covers a team playing in a national championship, and that pales in comparison to what it was like for these teams having to endure all this. And I know that I don't know, I can only speculate, but I'm sure that it played a part in what the numbers were for the national title game, among other things. Look, Ohio State playing in that game. Most people expecting Ohio State was going to win and probably win big in that game. And certainly the game starting out the way it did played a big number of that. Nobody was going to hang around on a Monday night that they didn't care about anyways and watch Ohio State, this team that everybody hates outside of Ohio and Ohio State fans. Nobody was going to sit there and watch them win a national championship. So, there are a lot of things that went into that. But for sure, this season played on forever, way too long. And that had a part in it that people were just kind of over college football at that point and over the college football playoff itself. Forget about the season and how long the season was. The college football playoff from start to finish is ridiculously long. It shouldn't be a month long to figure out a 12-team playoff national champion. And there's obvious things. College football needs to start in mid-August, or at least, a solid week earlier. It used to be when I was growing up that it did start in August. The first week of the season was always in late August. So I don't understand why, games don't get played until the following week now. So I guess it's starting in August this year, but it should be starting a week earlier. August 30th is the Texas game. Why aren't they starting on August 23rd? If they're going to keep this same schedule, to move that up, and you're right, eliminating games or days in between games in the playoffs would help as well. There are a few things that are obvious, but for sure they've got to do something to shorten the season for a lot of reasons, for the teams and certainly for other things as well.
That gives me hope right there that they'll never go past 16.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to go to 16. I think it's too many. I do like the fact that it's all right. No more bye weeks. We're all just playing. So you're not adding another week worth of time, but to be able to, if you go past that, now you've got to add another week. There's just not enough time. You'd have to give up regular season games and that'll never happen. So I guess I kind of like that, but when we talk about next season, since you brought up that opening game, you got Texas coming into Ohio Stadium. You talked to Ryan Day at one point this year about Julian Sand. I can't remember exactly what you asked him, but it was a week we were talking about. We hadn't seen many reps from Julian. We presume right now he's going to be the leader in the clubhouse. Obviously, you got Tavian St. Clair, you got Lincoln. Tavian a little, too green. You would imagine Lincoln, Julian's already passed him, so I can't see him beating him out. And it doesn't look like there's any transfer out there that's coming in to compete with Julian. So Julian is top 10 in the Heisman odds right now, as they've just opened up. Jeremiah is tied for third, if anybody hasn't seen those, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But Julian's saying Arch Manning, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Wingo, a rematch of the Cotton Bowl, Sark versus Ryan Day. The Buckeyes' first game as defending champs against Texas. Just might be number 1 versus number 2. It'll definitely be 2 top 4 teams. What a way to start the season after the way you ended it. I already can't wait, bro. I already can't wait.
Everything you just listed there, all those things that are going to go into that matchup, and then you're not even talking about, an SEC team coming into the Horseshoe for the first time in the regular season, and I'm not since LSU maybe back in.
I didn't even thought of that. Yeah.
Maybe I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Certainly not in my lifetime. So that as well. Walking into the stadium for the first time and seeing that 2024 in the north end zone next to the the
yes
sign. I mean, it's just. I don't want to wish this moment away because they don't come around often enough, even at a place like Ohio State. And that's something, my dad always taught me, because I've always grown up, I didn't want to enjoy anything. I just wanted to get to the games. I wanted the games to be played. He always tell me, enjoy the lead up to it, because once it's here, it'll be gone, and then it'll just be a memory and all these things. So I want to enjoy this moment, for sure. But looking ahead to that matchup and what it's going to mean for college football in the first week, again, that's another thing as well. All of that on top of the fact that just the natural excitement of college football is back. We know how that feeling is every year, no matter if you're opening against Akron or Notre Dame like it was a couple of years ago. Every year it's like that. The excitement of college football returning, Buckeye football is back, and then that game being everything we just mentioned. It's just going to be remarkable. So yeah, I don't want to wish this away. I'm not going to sit here and say, man, I can't wait to get to August, because I can. To be honest with you, I can. I enjoy the fact that Ohio State's back on the top of college football again for a little while. I want to decompress and take it easy for a little bit. And so I can't wait for that a little bit. But I know once that edge starts coming back, for Buckeye football, and then knowing what the game is that we're looking forward to, that first one, man, that's going to be a really, really special event come August 30th.
Do you have anything? Do you know, I don't know. You usually tell me the next things that are planned, media access. What do you have, the next scheduled thing, or this is just all right, everybody's on a break now?
Yeah, obviously past the celebration on Sunday, and doing that, past that, there's the next time we hear from Jerry about whatever is going to be scheduled will probably be this spring practice schedule, which again is only going to be in 3 weeks. You get back from Atlanta, what a whirlwind. You still have more to write. And then I don't know, about 4 weeks, I guess, about a month. You're going to be getting scheduled for spring practice. That's going to be starting in a week or two after that. So, so I hope there's nothing else. I guess, I don't know. I can't remember. There's still technically the February signing day, the real signing day, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't remember. I don't think that we do anything on the real signing day, because we've already done the national signing day stuff. And obviously, everybody's pretty much already in. So I don't think so, but that would be the only other thing before spring practice that I can think of.
So you covering some hoops now?
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to, I say, taking a break, but I'm actually looking forward to being able to get back into basketball and covering the basketball team, on a regular basis, which I haven't been able to do because, look, I had, I cover high school football as well. I had Olentangy Liberty go win a state title. So they played into December as well. Ohio State makes this run. Basketball, it's already number 3 on my priority list, just naturally. But I love Ohio State basketball. I have since I was a kid, and I love covering Ohio State basketball. But it was already number 3 on the priority list anyways, and it was especially difficult with the runs that, my other two beats were on. So, I'm looking forward to get back into basketball and covering them on a regular basis. Obviously, they had a big win last week, so we'll see if that can get them back on track. It's a Jekyll and Hyde team, so it's fun and frustrating at the same time to cover them. But
are you having any regret with Diebler? How you feeling about that?
No. I think it's still too early to tell. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a big Diebler believer, nor that I'm out on Diebler. I'm not either. I know Jake Diebler's an awesome guy. I think similar to Ryan Day, he's just a wonderful leader of men. So in that sense, I'm excited for Ohio State, but I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other on him in terms of, future of the program. I know that they better start stacking some wins and avoid some of these bad losses and make the tournament, because I won't be this way, because it'll still be too early to call this. But knowing how Ohio State fans reacted when he was hired, if he misses the tournament, and it's not off the table that he could miss the tournament, and given what they've done through up to this point of the season, that's going to be a very, very bad start to the Jake Diebler tenure. I mean, I get it too. Like I thought Ohio State fans were being a little irrational in talking about hiring Diebler and why they didn't go outside the program, but I also understood to some degree as well, why you wouldn't want to, at least do a national search. You can always circle back, and Diebler's your guy. So I get it to some degree. But I do know if he misses the tournament this year, it's going to be pretty loud about Jake Diebler. And I won't be one of those people, because it'll just still be too early to tell. But I would advise him not to miss the tournament. So.
All right, D, I know you got a big Celtics-Lakers game tonight, my man. Another excellent rivalry.
Oh, yeah.
Have a good time. Good luck to your guys, buddy. I appreciate you joining us. And
I want to say one more thing. So in case anybody, if I ever say anything stupid on here, and I have, and I will say more stupid things on here if I continue to be on this show. But I don't run from anything that I say. I know I'll be wrong about things. If you care to have an opinion on stuff and voice that opinion on stuff, you're going to be wrong eventually. So I'm gonna make sure I call myself out on something, because as I was thinking back on this season, one of the things I thought about is the fact that, like, you and I have, my first show with you was on the second day of spring practice. So we've, I've been doing this show for this entire run. So anytime I think back to this season, I'll think about doing the show and like what a journey this has been in of itself. So back after Josh Simmons got hurt, and obviously I was super down on the offensive line, I said something that was just flat out not true at all. And certainly nobody's called me out on it, which I appreciate. But again, I'm not afraid to call myself out, because I know that I'll be wrong about things, and I won't run from it. I said that the idea that Donovan Jackson would slide out to left tackle, and then he was all of a sudden going to be some all-conference, all-American type left tackle, having never played the position before, was an absolute, joke to think that you could bank on that. And as a result, Ohio State's offensive line was going to struggle naturally. It speaks for itself. That was dumb. That was dumb to say. I don't think it was dumb in the moment to think that probably wasn't likely to happen. But again, it's just another element of how improbable this season has been for Ohio State. But I want to make sure that in case somebody ever digs that up, I'm well aware of it. That was dumb. I was so wrong about that. Happy to be wrong about it. But I was very wrong, and I shouldn't have spoke so definitively. I should have voiced my doubt that would happen, but I spoke definitively and said it's not going to happen. Oh, and it happened. So, and as a result, he's going to be, one of the more prized offensive line prospects in the draft because of that versatility. So, didn't know Donovan had it in him. I should have known, because he's a straight dude, just an awesome player, awesome guy. So I should have known, but that's on me. Hand up, I'll wear it. So,
Dylan, I said yesterday, in fact, I said I was talking about the most valuable player on this team, and I think he is the single most valuable, because I think you can remove almost anybody and kind of interchange a piece and potentially do this. I almost feel for a fact, if no Donovan Jackson is on this team, you cannot get this done. I don't think there's any way you can do this without him. But an amazing job by him, and wow. What an awesome guy. Because, coming out and saying like he didn't really want to do it, which you don't really think about that when when we're doing this, like, well, what do? You move this piece here. Well, maybe the guy doesn't want to do it. Right? But he wanted to do it for his team, and he said it would be selfish. He's an awesome dude. Again, they're just an awesome group of guys.
Sure.
I love these guys.
Yep.
And I'm so happy. Like, I just wanted them to at least win that one damn game against Tennessee, so that they didn't go out feeling like they never did a damn thing. And they go on to do it all. Yeah. An amazing story, man. Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.
Appreciate you.
All right, have a good one. That's our show today. Please set your alarm bells, like the video, subscribe. I appreciate you guys so much. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. JUCK on Bucks out. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck. Who the f- is Juck?
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks. Juck on Bucks.
Juck.
Juck. Juck on Bucks.
My guy, Juck.
Juck on Bucks.
My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juck on Bucks.
Okay.
Juck is junk.
The Juck eyes.
Juck eyes.
Juck on Bucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.